Most governance tension does not begin with a vote. It begins with a sentence no one revisits. In many strong-performing community banks, shareholder alignment feels settled. Dividends are consistent, capital remains strong, there is no organized pressure, no public disagreement, the room feels settled. Ownership, however, rarely stands still. An estate settles and shares move to 3 adult children living in different states. A longtime shareholder sells part of his position to fund something outside of the bank. A family that once voted together now owns smaller pieces individually. No one announces any of it. The shareholder list simply changes. I was sitting in an annual meeting once when a longtime shareholder approached the CEO afterward. The conversation was friendly. He thanked management for its consistency, shook the CEO's hand, and said almost in passing, "We've always trusted the board. We assume when the time is right, you'll do what's appropriate." Then he smiled and walked away. The CEO told me later that comment stayed with him. Not because it sounded like pressure, because he realized the board had never defined what appropriate meant. The next board meeting looked like every other board meeting. Credit quality was reviewed, margin outlook was discussed, the strategic agenda moved forward. Nothing unusual happened. But the CEO found himself listening differently. When capital flexibility came up, he wondered what each director believed that flexibility was for. When dividends were discussed, he wondered whether everyone viewed them the same way. No one mentioned shareholder expectations, yet somehow they seemed present in every conversation. I've seen similar moments arrive in quieter ways. A director mentions that a cousin who owns shares asked whether the stock would ever become more liquid. Nobody follows up. The meeting moves on. Later, as directors gather their materials and head for the door, one asks another, "Do you think we're hearing that more often?" The question hangs there for a moment. Neither director has an answer. Nothing feels urgent, but something feels less certain than it did earlier that morning. Inside many institutions, shareholder expectations appear this way. Not as demands, as fragments. A comment at an annual meeting, a question after a board meeting, a passing reference to a transaction somewhere else. Each one is easy to dismiss. Taken together, they can start to change how directors hear the conversations already taking place. I've watched boards where the language sounded slightly different than it had a few years earlier. Discussions that once focused almost entirely on building the franchise began including more references to valuation, liquidity, or market alternatives. No vote was proposed. No strategy was rewritten. The conversation simply sounded different. Performance can make this difficult to see. When earnings remain strong and capital remains healthy, it is easy to assume alignment still exists because nothing appears unsettled. A board chair once gave me an answer I'll never forget. After a strategy discussion, I asked him privately, "If 3 of your largest shareholders hoped for liquidity within the next 5 years, would the board know?" He didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, looked out the window for a moment, then said, "We've never asked it that directly." The pause told me more than the answer. The silent shareholder variable is not whether shareholders want a sale. Many may not. The question is simpler than that. What time horizon is the board actually governing for? I've seen boards operate comfortably for years under assumptions that may very well be correct. Shareholders are patient. Independence is expected. Liquidity is secondary. The issue is not whether those assumptions are right. The issue is whether anyone has discussed them recently. Because when a nearby bank sells or ownership changes hands, or evaluation headlines start circulating, old assumptions have a way of becoming visible. Not because anyone challenges them, because people begin quietly testing them. The objective is not concern. The objective is clarity. Would the board know if shareholder expectations had changed? When was the last time those expectations were discussed directly? Has anyone ever defined the time horizon the institution is building toward? Those questions are easier to ask before they become important, before another casual comment stays with someone longer than expected, before silence starts being mistaken for agreement. There may be a discussion worth scheduling, not reactively, intentionally. What time horizon are we actually governing on behalf of our shareholders? And when was the last time the board explicitly agreed on the answer?